Shelley, I'll go get that as soon as roll call's over.
Huh?
I'll go get that as soon as roll call's over.
What?
I'll get it as soon as roll call's over.
Okay.
Yes, please. I forget that you can get into our office.
I'm useful sometimes.
Nobody else can get in.
I mean, I have some.
Coming out. Coming back.
That's great.
Yeah, it's darker too.
Where's that rubber band for your ponytail? It is darker, look at that.
It is dark.
Yeah, so just yeah, that's why it's better to schedule, yeah.
All right. Good evening. We'll call the meeting to order. This is a special city council meeting. Sean, will you please call roll?
Deputy Mayor Pelosa.
Here.
Councilmember Baggett. Here. Councilmember Brown. Here. Councilmember DeCoursey.
Here.
Councilmember Holman.
Here.
Councilmember Trout-Manuel.
Here.
Councilmember Wells.
Excused. All right, we have on the agenda this evening one item. It is funding options to continue with new revenue option discussion. And Director Coleman has a presentation for us, as well as Councilmember DeCoursey.
Thank you. I have spoken with Councilmember DeCoursey, and he would like to do his presentation first. We are gathering the slide deck for the finance presentation as I speak. So if you would like me to drive your PowerPoint for
Sure,
you,
that'd
I'd
be
be
great.
happy
Thank
to
you.
do
Thank
that.
you very much. Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, so I've had a couple of meetings with Shelley regarding our budget, and prior to our last meeting, I had put together a fairly extended PowerPoint presentation, and Shelley gave me a call. We met that same afternoon, because at that time she had gone back again to kind of true up the numbers, and we found that the numbers were better than what she had presented prior to that, which would have modified my presentation. But we met again this afternoon, and I've gone back through a couple times, again, related to what we discussed about priorities. So what you can see in front of you is my recommendations for priorities. And if we go to the next one, and just to remind everybody that this is my work. We haven't collaborated or consulted on this with anybody else on the council. We've gone through, I've gone through the budget books and took a look at where we are and make some recommendations related to what we are here. But this data is basically just presented tonight for our discussion purposes. No conclusions are being made, no other suggestions or analysis except what I'm presenting this evening. So it's just kind of food for thought, if you will, for tonight, so we can kind of keep this moving forward. So what I've looked at for priorities, well, I see it is we definitely have to maintain our basic city services no matter what. So our core services, our basic city services, the things that are essential, like emergency management naturally and other things like that, are basics that we fund under the general fund. All those things have to be done. Our policing services naturally have to be maintained, and we just have to continue on regardless of where we are and come up with some solutions as we go forward here. So with that, what I'm recommending is that at least through 2024, we maintain our current FTE base, which is actually, I guess, 450.6 FTEs, but we maintain our current FTE base. Unless things change during this period of time as we go forward. Remember, we're looking at 2019 and 2020 where our budgets are already in place, and we've appropriated that for the next 2 years. And as we go into 21 and 22, this council is going to have to once again go back through and take a look at all these same issues and look at where we are financially, and probably make some more decisions and have more discussions related to where we are in the next biennium as we go forward. So also what I'm recommending is that we look at and go through city-provided programs that are funded through the general fund. And we need the department director's help in doing this as well, because they run the programs, they have their budgets, they know where their dollars are, and we're going to kind of need to work together with them to look at what we have and whether there's any opportunity there to look at something modified or different in relation to what we're providing for city programs. Then I'm looking at presenting some suggested revenue measures and options, which Shelley and Bob helped put together in the Excel spreadsheet that Shelley showed us last time, and there's been some modifications to that, so I've got some suggestions related to that. And then I've also looked at budget modifications for the next 4 years, and then maybe beyond that. One of the key things that is going to need to be looked at, and Mayor, I'm going to ask the department directors for your help to kind of look at this as we go forward, but we need a forecast, and we need to know as we grow to a population of 100,000 plus, what that's going to mean for us and what the FTE projection will be for that point in time. And incrementally, as we get from 82,000 to 100,000, and more than likely more than 100,000 as this city continues to grow and go forward. But 450 FTEs cannot sustain city services when you're 100,000 unless we do some major cutbacks and keep it where it's at. So that's going to be a key priority for me, and I hope for you as well, is to look at what our projection growth needs to be for that period of time. So the next slide shows my recommendations for measures and options, and then Shelley has the spreadsheet we'll go through to kind of show how we arrived at this. But my main recommendations would be that we look at a voter measure levy lift, and as Shelley has recommended, we would look at a permanent lift, and this would be at $2 million for year one, and then incrementally we look at a 1%, 2%, or 3% incremental increase in the levy yearly, and I'm recommending we look at a 3% per year for 5 years. Now, if you go back to Shelley's last presentation, recall what she looked at for a levy lift, the dollar impact per year on the levy lift was between about $28 and $55 total for the lift per year for each person each household that pays into property tax and such. So the 3% is going to have a little bit more impact on that, but Shelley will have the numbers probably that we can present for that. Also, I'm looking at a recommendation for a measure for a square footage B&O tax at 10 cents per square foot, and this would be related to warehousing, manufacturing, and mini storages only. So not a general business B&O tax at the 0.01 or the 0.02. This is strictly related to the 20 million square feet plus we have in warehousing and manufacturing and storage. And then lastly, looking at proposing a modification to the gambling tax for the years 2020 to 2024 to increase it from 4% to 10%. And with that, the last thing I'm looking at on the next slide is a potential looking at us as a council, and perhaps along with department directors, of looking at a budget reduction, a modification in the years 2021, 22, 23, and 24, at $1.5 million for 21 and 22, and then a $2 million reduction in 23 and 24 for a grand total over those 4 years of a $6 million reduction in our overall budget with that. So those are my points, my recommendations, and again, the priorities as I laid out of what I've looked at as where I believe we need to be as we go forward in reviewing this as a council. So thank you.
These, you may recognize this from the tool that we built, and these are the options that Councilmember DeCoursey selected, the ones highlighted in yellow. The property tax lid lift with a 3% inflator year over year for the next 5 years. An increase in the card room tax, the gambling tax, from 4% to 10%, which would generate about $600,000 a year. The next one is the increase and decrease in expenditures, and you see the $1.5 million for 2021 and 2022, and $2 million for 2023 and 2024, and then the 10 cents per square foot B&O tax washing or warehousing, storage, and manufacturing, which would generate about $2.2 million a year, so more like 2.25. Here's what fund balance looks like with these factors selected, and at the end of 2024 there's a healthy $16.2 million fund balance. And then what this is, a revenue and expenditure gap, but it also takes into consideration, because when we look at these, many times you see a revenue line and an expenditure line, but we're not looking at the attrition, the salary and benefit attrition from vacant positions, or maybe a little more revenue than we have budgeted, and maybe budgets that aren't entirely spent. So we've included that residual budget in there to show where we would be at theoretically under this assumption. Did you?
Shelley, but you're showing that we would still have a gap in spending of $4.5 million.
Yes.
So for everyone's understanding, we would still have.
The city would have to address the gap again around 2023, 2024. When we get out beyond 2 or 3 years, it gets pretty fuzzy.
Right.
And so we don't really know. It's something that we have to continually monitor. And under this, what we know today, and under these assumptions, this is what it looks like. Now, tomorrow, the legislature may come through with some streamlined sales tax mitigation, which would change this. So we don't know. Actually, it's a year-by-year thing. I wouldn't say day-by-day, but it's a year-by-year thing, what may happen. And Sean is handing out my PowerPoint presentation. Thank you, Sean, so much for that.
And Shelley, I don't think it's in the presentation that you just handed out, but one of the things that I was just talking with Dana Hinman about, Director Hinman, is at one point you provided a chart that showed how much revenue we have lost over time. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a critical component of this as well for everyone, council and the public, to get a full understanding. Is this isn't because we have been just spending wildly, but over the course of time, we have lost revenues that would have kept us from having to consider raising additional revenues.
Correct. And our sales tax base hasn't grown as robust as other cities, and it's primarily due to the sourcing change 10 years ago. And the state did mitigate this city, and has mitigated, to nearly $2 million a year. However, the growth, that was set during the recession. And the growth from those businesses during that time have grown significantly. I did an exercise where I went back and looked at the year-over-year growth of sales tax revenue prior to the recession. And the average year-over-year growth was 6.5 or 7%. Since the recession, starting when we got out of when we started gaining sales tax revenue again, the sales tax growth year-over-year is more like 4%. So our growth has slowed down. I just wanted to get a measure.
And our base changed as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, we lost $5 million in the base over 2 years. We went down. Last year, we finally surpassed our 2007 sales tax, $18.5 million. And last year, we finally got back to $18.5 million. is taking that long just to come back to where we were at 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So,
And so we would have had growth on top of that.
yes.
In addition to losing that, we have also we've compounded that loss by the growth in sales tax that would have occurred every year.
Yeah. So I put the cups up here. I just wanted to do a little primer. This big black cup is the general fund. This is one fund. This red cup represents all of our special revenue funds, and we have 10 of those. And that's like the BIA, the lodging tax, our cumulative reserve fund, our 3 street funds. We have a drug enforcement fund. That's where our impact fees go into a special revenue fund for parks and streets. So 7 of these different revenues go in here. This is the debt service. We have several of these debt service funds. It includes SCORE, it includes the golf course, it includes the promenade project debt, it includes the building across the street debt, and so forth. This represents 3 capital projects funds, and we still have a little bit of renovation money left from the promenade project, maybe $400,000 that we still have to spend. But then basically this is our parks capital construction fund, which is 1. Then we have our capital projects fund for all other projects. So there's 3 of these. This is our enterprise, our 7 enterprise funds: water, sewer, storm, solid waste, cemetery, not golf course anymore, and airport. And so these funds are all funded by user fees that go into these funds. And this final one is our internal service fund. And we have 5 of those, 5 cups, which include our workers' comp, our IT, our facilities and equipment rental fund, those types of funds. So what we're talking about here tonight, we aren't talking about these funds, these funds, these funds, these funds, or these funds. We're talking about this fund. That's it. And this is operations. This pays for salaries and benefits for the general fund service, which is basically all of our street maintenance. It is our parks department. It is our police department and their activities. It's our court. It's the cost of doing business of HR, legal, and finance, and administration, all in this cup. And what goes in there are property taxes, which are 30% of our general fund revenue to fund all those things I just talked about. And that revenue grows by 1% year over year, or about $225,000, $250,000. What goes into there also sales taxes, also all of our permit revenues. We have services, and we have state shared revenues. Some miscellaneous things like our rents that are charged on our facilities through the Parks Department, or maybe we have a tower on top on some public property somewhere that isn't owned by a utility that we might be collecting some revenue for, but it's not a great amount, the rent. Our interest revenue on the monies that are residual in the general fund. So I just wanted to make that, so we're not confused between the money.
Deputy Mayor Pelosi.
Shelley, for our next meeting of this kind, can you provide us all of the items that go into that cup?
Sure, all the departments and what they do, what their general cost centers are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Deputy Mayor, just as a reminder, you have asked that the next meeting be solely on the priorities of council for budget.
Yeah, well, whenever our revenue option next meeting is.
Okay.
Sure.
I just
Yeah.
wanted to clarify because
Yep.
you specifically asked for it to
Yep.
just be priorities.
Yeah, I know I did. Thank you.
Okay, and again, not to go on ad nauseum, but again, the state legislature has discontinued the streamlined sales tax revenue effective September this year. That's about $4 million million loss over the biennium, 19 and 20. However, both the House and the Senate budgets are looking at funding this. The Senate's looking at funding it just for 2 more years at a much lower rate than the House. The House is looking at funding it at its existing level for 4 more years. It's in their biennial, and then they have an additional supplemental budget that runs over the next 2 bienniums. So it's about 16 million and 18 million. And I don't know why the 1921 biennium funding is less than the next biennium, which is the 21 through 23. I don't know why. I haven't gotten into it. But again, the property tax cap is 1%. The cost of labor and benefits are growing at a rate greater than current inflation at 2.8%, or our projected revenues. The public safety contracts SCORE, King County District Court, and Valleycom are increasing almost 1.3 million in 19 over prior year, 2018. That's a 15% increase. Increasing costs for programs for homeless services, 1 million over the biennium. I think that Director Hinman has forwarded the schedule of all those, how those funds are going to be utilized. We have a young police force, and salaries are increasing at not just a COLA every year, but they have a 2.5% step increase between each year, and there's 7 steps. So that rate is over $1 million a year. Medical benefits increased about 10% from 2018 to 2019, and police grants have sunset. We've hired several police officers over the last 6-7 years on grants, COPS more grants, and those have all sunset. I've heard council, some of the members of council talk about, well, what about all this new development going on in downtown? Where's the revenue off of that? Well, I would like to remind council, this chart that you're looking at here, this is for these 4 blocks, that traffic impact fees were waived, and that's about $800,000, and then the general government has to make up those impact fees. So it's kind of a double whammy. The city is not only not receiving $800,000 in revenue, but the general government has to come up with $800,000 more in revenue to pay those traffic impact fees. You can't just say, oh, no problem, they have to be paid. So that's about a $1.6 million hit there. Park impact fees were waived, about $1.7 million. Permit fees were reduced, almost $700,000 in permit fees.
So Shelley, park impact fees were reduced by 75%. So there was
Okay.
there was no payback from the general fund dollars to the park impact
Correct.
fund, but we did not collect
Correct.
as much as
We would have.
for other projects.
Right. The Truck Apartments and Merrill Gardens are enjoying a property tax abatement. It's an 8-year abatement, and based upon their current assessment, and when you look, you see they still have to pay property tax on the utility and the land, but not on the development. And so when you look at the value of the development that's exempted from taxes, the city of Auburn, you can see it's almost $700,000. Auburn Town Center will probably also file for a property tax exemption, and Legacy Senior Housing also. The total impact is about $4.7 million from this schedule for the
And that's
downtown.
over about an 8 to 10 year period.
Well, from when Trek began to when this final project's done, Trek is about 4 years into their 8-year exemption. Merrill Gardens is 2 years into their exemption. I thought that was worth mentioning. Also, we've talked about discretionary and non-discretionary spending in the general fund. This slide, this is from 2018. This is what we talked about last March at your council retreat. And salaries and benefits in the budget were $41.4 million of the $64.9 million non-discretionary. The balance of that is $23.5 million of non-discretionary. The interfunds, you can see, are about 5, 6, 7, 8, almost 9 million. We have SCORE and court-related, about 6.5 million, and this is 2018 budget. Valleycom, 3.3 million. The LEF benefits, funding the LEF 1. Debt service, and other non-discretionary, and if you're wondering what other non-discretionary is, that would be streetlights, public defender, election costs, annual state audit, insurance, to name a few. Then that brings us to just under $10 million of discretionary. So what is that discretionary funding? That's funding all the human services, some parks things, utilities, the contingency funds that we budget contingency for salaries and other things in case there's an emergency. We budget about, for salaries and things, maybe about $900,000 a year. Some of these things that I looked up in detail last year, when I put parks on here, that's like the fertilizer for the parks. That's irrigation for the parks. That is maintenance for parks. Human services, there's now about $1.3 million in the budget for homeless and human services. So we didn't call those non-discretionary because we don't have to pay those, like we have to pay SCORE and the court and Valleycom, our salaries and benefits, if we have the people hired. Of course, if there's a reduction, then you wouldn't have to pay those salaries and benefits. But I just wanted to let you have a feeling of the pressure in the general fund and what's available. And this is just that chart that you just looked at. This is a little more detail of the dollars behind it. I was asked a couple of weeks ago, one of the council members wanted to see public safety contract history. So here's Valleycom, King County District Court, and SCORE Jail. And there's where the $1.35 million, 2019 over 2018, with a 15% increase. SCORE Jail and Valleycom, those are hard numbers. Those are contracted, they're set in budget. Valleycom and SCORE are expecting, we pay those on Valleycom every 2 months, we pay 2 months worth, and SCORE we pay every month. King County District Court, that will be settled at some point this year for last year, but you can see that we've had, in the last couple of years, we've had some significant increases year over year. And then I wanted to look at general fund salary and benefit increases. The cost of labor in this area is getting very competitive. We're under a 4% unemployment rate, and businesses, government included, they're cannibalizing each other's employees. You know, so where can we find someone to do the work that has the skills to do the work that we need to have done? And what you can see in 2019, $3.5 million more for salaries and benefits in 2019 than in 2018. And this does not include the guild contract costs that are tentatively out there and tentative until council accepts the contract. Back in 2017, we hired 6 police department people, 1 traffic engineer. And the reason that the benefits here were so low in 2016, that's the year that we went to Primera, and we got that one-time great reduction. And you can see how that went in 2017 and 2018. This is a graph to show the increase, the just general fund increase in salaries and benefits. This is a real thing, and it's cutting the budget any amount. It's going to have to be cut more than whatever. If we want to cut it, I'm just saying, if we want to cut it $1.5 million or $2 million a year, then we have to also cut it by the delta of the increase of salary and benefits every year, unless we do something with staffing. There was a question about homeless human wellness services. The top red line is wellness and human services. The big bump up in 2015, if you recall, there was a $220,000 payment to King County Public Health for the Auburn Clinic. And the homeless response, you can see that that's been increasing. And then the question about wellness, it's in human services, and it includes the Healthy Auburn 2020, which I think was part of one of the council retreats about 4 years ago. Yeah, and so that's about $153,000 a year. So I put together some revenue options like Councilmember DeCoursey for your consideration. And I also looked at a $2 million voted levy lid lift. It would be 6 years like Councilmember DeCoursey's, a permanent lift. Also looked at adding 10 cents per square foot B&O on manufacturing, mini storage, retail, and office. This is one of the options. Looked at it on all services, not just manufacturing, mini storage, and warehousing. That'd be about $2.7 million a year. A 1% increase in city-owned utility taxes. An increase of additional development fees to recoup costs, about $300,000 annually. We could go back and look at that cost of service study that we completed last year and see if there's other services that the city's providing that we're not where we should be recouping more. And it also reflects an increase in investment income. With the revenue increases and increased revenues, we'll have more money for investment. And it's about $1 million in interest revenue over the term of this, and it's considered to be at 2.75%. Right now, we're earning 2.5 in the state pool, plus we have some agencies out there where we're doing a bit better than that. And this is, again, this is the selection on slide 11 that shows the items that were selected. This is what the fund balance looks like over option 1 over the term. And the option 1 revenue and expenditure net of residual budget. It also has a gap. Revenue option number 2, again, the only difference between this option and option number 1 is a 10% per square foot tax on just warehousing, manufacturing, and mini storage, but then a 2% increase in city-owned utilities beginning January 1st. And here are the options that were selected. A little more fund balance here, maybe about $1 million more at the end of 2024. We still have the revenue expenditure gap that appears, something that in 3 years, if we do these things, some of these things, in 3 years we'll have to continue to monitor this. We're in this labor environment, and this does not plan into any recession into it, but it doesn't also incorporate anything that might happen down at the outlet collection if there's additional building out there. So it's just a vanilla plain forecast. Now, the legislative update, the Senate dropped their budget late last week, and here's what they had in for Auburn. They had all cities $8 million over the biennium, and this was 11 cities that they were going to continue funding. And this is about a little bit less than half. And then the House proposal total for our cities, and I don't have it on a granular level to see what Auburn, but it looks like they're funding the whole program for the cities for not just the 19 and 21 biennium, but the budget that will be passed will be the 19 and 21 biennium. They won't be passing a budget for 21 through 23, but they have a projected budget out there that's kind of like, well, this is what we think we might do. It goes out 2 more years. So we're going to watch this. I think everything's due towards the end of the month. Are there any questions?
Council questions? Deputy Mayor Plaza?
Thank you, Mayor. Chart 7. Can you give a little more detail again on Primera?
Well, the city,
If you could start with when we left,
AWC,
yeah, and why we left, and what were the benefits, and
well, the human resource director at the time was frustrated because he couldn't see the city's experience rating. And with Primera, he could see the experience rating, where AWC does not show each jurisdiction's experience rating, because you don't want someone saying, well, why I'm subsidizing this city, or so they just don't share that. It's a pool, it's a risk pool, and everyone pays the same. So in the first year that we went to Primera, there was a reduction in the premium, so we didn't really see an increase, and I think that there was like a $700,000 reduction, but there was some we have a third-party administrator that we pay, and some other things. So the actual savings in that first year is about $600,000. So based upon the city's experience, it went up in 2017 and again in 2018, and it's gone up again in 2019. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, Candace, but Primera has said that the premiums that they receive are not covering their costs for the city of Auburn's.
Yeah, that's correct. We've negotiated some, and we'll discuss it in the closed session after the meeting today, but we've negotiated some plan modifications to help control that cost, and hopefully should have a beneficial impact on our rate renewals. That's what our broker is anticipating. So we're hoping to reduce the amount of insurance renewal as a double-digit percentage in the future. But we had to negotiate that with the guild, and so we've successfully done that in this upcoming contract.
So, go ahead.
are there any future opportunities to reduce some of those costs?
There always are future opportunities, but it depends on the negotiating cycle, the contract cycle.
Plus, to be competitive in today's market, you have to remain competitive with the surrounding cities and other agencies. As Shelley said, in a time when unemployment is so low, you are competing for that same talent pool. And so you have to have some ability to attract new employees to your teams. And if you reduce salaries or you reduce benefits significantly, we're not as attractive to them. And consequently, we may not get the talent that we need to fill the positions that we have when we are looking at growth in our city.
Thank you.
I mean, you know, when people make the comment that, well, this is a time of great economic growth, the city must not be responsible in their spending, that's simply not the case. You look at about 83 or more % of what we spend is non-discretionary. And the portion that Shelley mentioned to you that is discretionary, in some cases really isn't that discretionary. You're looking at fertilizer for the parks. You're looking at paying for street lights. You're looking at paying for things,
I forgot,
street lights, yeah.
You can go dark.
Yeah, you can go dark. I don't recommend that, because then you have the indirect cost with perhaps additional crimes or things that are going to cost you more in the long run. It's simply not a matter of cutting funding to make up the projected need for revenues to pay for the growth in this city. We know that residential growth does not pay for growth, right? Commercial gets close to paying for its own growth in the city, but residential growth does not pay for itself. And then if the developer they're required to build the roads or do the road improvements, they turn them over to the city, then that becomes our asset as well as our liability, because we are then responsible for maintaining those future improvements. So it's simply not a matter of us being really frivolent spenders of the citizens' dollars. It is a matter of expenses growing significantly that we have little or no control over. And again, if you want to start looking at cuts to our budgets, that means people. That does not mean cutting our pens and paper supply in half. It means people. And at a time when our city is projecting growth, that's really a challenge to say we're going to cut people, and yet we are going to have more people coming into our city. So there's where the challenge of finding the revenue streams to support that growth. Can we be cautious with our discretionary spending? Absolutely, we all can. We can all look at some of those items. But that is not where we are going to find the answer to this issue. The answer to this issue, as much as I hate to say it, is going to be looking at new revenue streams. Deputy Mayor Pelosi.
I would just like to point out that in my circle of friends, we know it costs money to own a home, to have all of the programs that we have in our city. We have a lot of good things going on, but we need to educate the citizens that tax money is what provides a good quality of life for us living in the city of Auburn. So in my circle of friends, again, it doesn't bother us to discuss raising taxes for the quality that we get in the city. For the people that can't afford some of those things, then we have programs to help people that are, say, below the economy line of affordability. We do have programs that will take care of a lot of those concerns by people that are, you know, worried about repairing their home, et cetera. So my philosophy is we have to pay taxes to get the services that we are affording. Thank you, Mayor.
Oh, and as a reminder as well, I had an email this weekend from someone with a concern saying, I pay over $5,000 a year in property taxes. What are you doing for me? It has to be a reminder that the city does not receive the property taxes, all of the property taxes that any resident or any business pays. In fact, in the current climate, we get 14 cents of each property tax dollar, and sales tax-wise, Shelley, we get what, about 9 or 10 cents on each dollar?
We get around there, yeah.
Yeah. So on 50,000 or on 5,000, we get 14% of that. And I don't think a lot of our residents or taxpayers think about where their tax dollars go. They just know that they feel like they are burdened with taxes. Completely understood. But a majority of those taxes that are being paid, over 50, 60% of those taxes that are being paid are voted on by the public, right? So that's school bond measures, that's fire benefit charges, that's hospital districts. library districts, water utility districts. Those are all voted on by the taxpayers, the voters in this city. And so it's not as simple as it may sound. Councilmember Holman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not terribly knowledgeable on all the departments that make up the city. Because of a past life, past occupation, I am familiar with a police department. And so, Chief Pearson, I apologize, but under the heading of you get what you pay for, there are 281 cities in Washington State. The city of Auburn is one of the 20 safest cities to live in Washington State. This is stuff that was just shared with us by Sound Cities last night. We're in the top 20 individual cities. Now then, we do that by having a police department that is about one officer per 617 residents. That compares very well with Federal Way, 616 officers per resident. Kent, 669 residents per officers. And to function at that high of a level means we're recruiting and retaining good police officers. We're in a climate now where other cities are giving signing bonuses to hire away good trained police officers. An Auburn cop could earn a $15,000 signing bonus to go to another city. We're going to have to combat that by at least giving a good salary and benefit package that we can retain those officers. And the flip side of it is 80 to 85% of that police department budget goes into wages for the people that work, the police officers and the staff that work in Auburn Police Department. It's not gun belts and bullets and cars and shiny stuff. It's the people that make up that police department that keeps us in the top 20 safest places to live in the state of Washington. So there is no free lunch. We cannot cut our way to a resolution on this.
Any other council comments? Questions? Councilmember DeCoursey?
Thank you, Mayor. And I think as you mentioned, Mayor, and as Shelley has reminded us again, as you look at the charts, even looking at these measures that we're potentially going to contemplate putting in, you know, we still have that gap, although the fund balance is above the line, which is good, and it gives us a much higher percentage than we would normally take in and hold. We still have to deal with that somewhere between 4.5 and $5.7 million gap that's going to hit us. So, and I greatly appreciate what the mayor said about, you know, when you cut expenses, you're cutting people. And although I'm looking at us looking at potentially trimming the budget, I'm hoping we can do it without cutting people, because we need every person that we have here, and we can't reduce our services or reduce our impact on what we do on a daily basis to support the people in this city. So definitely looking at the charts, and appreciate Shelley's options as well. You know, looking at the various options we have, we still need the people's involvement. So a levy lid And we've all mentioned it about going out for a voter initiative on levy lid, which is something we're going to have to decide pretty soon to get it out in the right time frame. So us as a council kind of have the burden on our shoulders of doing this rather quickly in this. So I would just ask each of my fellow council members also to look at priorities and put your priorities in place as we talked before, and see how this matches up together so our next conversation can be pretty much in somewhat a definitive manner of some direction we could give the mayor and staff about where we want to go with this and what we need to do to get there. So our time is short, and before long we're going to be back into another round of budget planning at the middle of next year. So we've got a short time to put this together.
And just one thing, the chart that I mentioned that Dana sent to Shelley is one that Shelley had put together and presented to council in 2015. And it's City of Auburn Tax Loss from Washington State Legislative or Initiative Action. From 1996 through 2014, the cumulative loss to the city was $50.2 million. So that included liquor excise tax eliminated, reduction in streamlined sales tax mitigation, repealed $15 local option vehicle excise tax, limited property taxes to 1%, repeal of motor vehicle excise tax, limited property tax increase, and exemption of sales tax on manufacturing and equipment. So there have been some significant revenue losses that the city has endured, and sometimes it has been, as I've mentioned before, it doesn't mean that the general public has had their expenses reduced on this. It's simply a matter of when the state legislature needs to balance their budget, they look at what these shared revenues are, and they choose to take those shared revenues, like the liquor excise tax that was shared between the state and the local municipalities. They take away our share of that revenue, and in its place, they give us a new taxing opportunity to tax our residents. Now, the state is whole, and if we need to be made whole, or if we want to be made whole, then we are the bad guys who have to go out and ask for additional funds from our citizens. That's the sheer fact of how we have got to the place that we are at. Part of it is a reduction in the revenue stream that we have had over the course of the years, not the least of which, as Shelley was talking about, is the streamlined sales tax. So when they mitigated us at a point during the recession. And we were receiving roughly $2 million a year to help fill that void, but it did not take into consideration what the growth in our sales tax would have been had we maintained the ability to keep that sales tax in our city before streamlined sales tax went into effect. So it's a complex issue. It can't be broken down into a simple 1 or 2 sentence paragraph and share with everyone. It's going to be a lot of work, a lot of education. But I have every faith in the world that this council and our directors will be working on this to a point where we have the least pleasant impact we possibly can. Councilmember Brown, you had a comment.
I did, and thank you, Mayor. I really want to thank you. I want to thank Councilmember DeCoursey and Director Shelley for the great explanation. And we have to become well-versed on what these options are because we have to make some decisions, but then we also have to use our voice to make it very clear to the citizens of Auburn what we're deciding about. Because I agree, we can't cut our way to a better quality of life or even maintain the quality of life that we have for the citizens of Auburn. The parks, the recreation programs for kids, the senior center, and the programs for
our elder citizens, and certainly our police department, which always comes when we need them. So I just look forward to coming to a decision here and then standing with my fellow council members and the mayor to project that to the citizens so we can make good decisions for our city.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Trout Manuel.
Shelley, thank you for bringing back what we requested on the wellness and the human services department. It really helped out to understand where these funds are going and how we're using them. So thank you, and thank you for bringing back the cups because that really helps out a lot.
The reunion tour. All right. Anything else? All right. So for this special council meeting, we are adjourned. The regular council meeting will commence in about 5 minutes or as soon as we can get the recordings switched over. Hey, Waylon.
Okay, thank you so much. Good to see you.
Council members, we are ready to get going as soon as it hits 7 p.m. All right, Sean, we're ready, right? Yes, all right. I will call this City Council meeting for April 1st, 2019 to order. If you'd please all rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. And Sean, will you please call roll?
Deputy Mayor Pelosa.
Here.
Councilmember Baggett. Here. Councilmember Brown.
He is out taking a call, I believe.
Councilmember DeCoursey. Here. Councilmember Holman. Here. Councilmember Trout-Manuel. Here. Councilmember Wells.
Excused. All right. We have 3 proclamations and a life-saving award presentation this evening, so I'm going to head to the podium and ask that Chief Pearson join me. It looks like we're getting used to having officers here receiving awards. I'm not happy that they're all life-saving awards so far, but the fact that we have incredibly talented, brave, dedicated officers who are willing to put their lives on the line and save the life of another is something that I believe that we need to be celebrating more than we have been. And so Chief and I have agreed that we would be bringing more of these awards forward for our council and for our residents to be able to understand what goes on in the life of a police officer. So, Chief, I am going to turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you everybody for coming. First of all, I'd like to introduce to you Officer Damon Hewen. Earlier tonight we were talking about quality of people, and I want to just say a few words about Damon before I actually talk about the award he's getting tonight, which is a life-saving award by the department. When you talk about quality of people and the kind of folks you're looking for in a police officer, and then you watch and listen to the kinds of things that they do when they earn an award like this, you meet guys like this. So here is a fella who did 11 years in the military. He did 2 tours over in the Middle East. He went to the University of Michigan and graduated with an engineering degree. And so when you get well-rounded folks like this, you'll hold on to them, because what I'm going to explain to you is the kind of work that they do. And I'm very proud of him for what he's done, and thankful that he's here serving this community. So let me start. On March 5th, 2019, you were dispatched to a CPR in progress. After arriving at the scene at 18:09 hours, you immediately started unassisted CPR until fire arrived and took over at 18:12. The patient was a 16-year-old female who went into cardiac arrest as a result of a reactive airway disease. The patient was transported to Mary Bridge and has since had open heart surgery. Leslie Pohl from the King County Medic 1 reported that your actions assisted in saving the patient's life. Without your quick response, it is believed that the patient's chances for survival would have been greatly diminished. Based on your actions that day, as well as your compassion and professionalism, you're hereby awarded the Auburn Police Department's Life-Saving Medal in recognition for your actions that saved the life of an Auburn resident. Your actions exemplify the core values of this department and serve as a role model for all officers. So, with that, I'd like to give you the Life-Saving Medal. Congratulations. All right.
Introduce your family, perhaps?
Thank you all for having me here. I have my fiance Rachel and our kids McKinley, Erica, Zakiah, and Mason. I just want to say that this is the reason I became a police officer. Everything that we do is all about preservation of life. I deeply care about the citizens of Auburn that I'm happy to serve. And I just want to say that although I'm the one who's standing up here today, that was a true team effort from the coaching staff at the schools to my crewmates, K-9 Officer Nelson and Officer Trent Dow, who were there to assist me, and also the assist efforts after by Valley Fire and King County Medic 1. And we're just all happy that she made it through and is doing well. That's all I got.
So Officer Hewen, if you would go forward and accept the appreciation of council.
It'll take you longer to get your Class A's ready now. Go Army.
We don't hold it against him that he's a Detroit Lions fan, ever. Maybe just a smidge. All right, and now we have 3 proclamations. The first one this evening is the Arbor Day Proclamation. Do we have Bryce Landry here tonight, Daryl? No, so you are filling in. You're pitch hitting, aren't you? All right, come on up. No. I was just going to say, I hope he doesn't hit a tree. All right, so Arbor Day, a day that we celebrate in Auburn every year. So the proclamation reads, whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees, and this holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas 2019 is the 147th anniversary of the holiday, and Arbor Day is now observed through the nation and the world. And whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heat and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce life-giving oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and wherever they are planted, a resource of joy, beauty, and spiritual renewal. And whereas members of the Auburn Garden Club, statewide Washington Community Forestry Council, Department of Natural Resources, and the Auburn Urban Tree Board will join city officials and Auburn Parks Arts and Recreation Department employees in planting a tree at Isaac Evan Park, located at 29627 Green River Road Southeast, on April 18th, 2019, in honor of Arbor Day. And now, therefore, I, Nancy Backus, Mayor of the City of Auburn, do hereby proclaim April 18th, 2019 as Arbor Day in the City of Auburn. And I urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. And further, I urge all citizens to plant trees to delight the heart and promote the well-being of our citizens now and for future generations. Dated this first day of April 2019, and Daryl, I am really excited that this year there is no doubt about what our tree is. We can pronounce it. It's a Douglas fir, and I bet I could even identify one.
Good.
So I will give that to you. Thank you. And do you have a few words you'd like to say?
Well, just on the morning of April 18 at Isaac Evans Park, we're also going to be showing off our new picnic shelter there that was destroyed by a cottonwood tree that came down. So we have been reforesting Isaac Evans over the last couple of years with more appropriate trees than cottonwoods, and this will be one of those opportunities to show off the new picnic shelter as well as enjoy the Arbor Day celebration.
Excellent. And
so,
and you have one more, yes. Okay, well, I won't ask you to go accept the appreciation of council until you have all of this in hand.
There you go.
All right, so we also have our 2019 Heritage Tree Proclamation. It's a tree night tonight. Whereas the City of Auburn has been designated a tree city by the Washington State Department of Natural Resources, sponsored by the National Arbor Day Foundation, in cooperation with the National Association of State Foresters, USDA Forest Service, U.S. Conference of Mayors, and National League of Cities, and whereas the City Council and City of Auburn established an urban tree board to assist the City Council in promoting the preservation and beautification of trees in the city, and whereas it is in the public interest to preserve significant trees for the purpose of climate modification, enhancing wildlife habitat, improving air quality, reducing soil erosion, and beautification of the city. And whereas Comprehensive Plan Policy EN.27 states that the city shall seek to protect any unique, rare, or endangered species of plants found within the city. And whereas a role of the Urban Tree Board is to nominate tree stewards for their community service of preserving unique trees within the City of Auburn. Now therefore, I, Nancy Backus, Mayor of the City of Auburn, do hereby declare the Auburn Parks Department 2019 Tree Stewards for preserving and caring for the Douglas fir tree at Auburndale Park, dated this first day of April 2019. Congratulations. Thank you. Did you want to say anything about this?
Just briefly, Auburndale Park is located just north of Wesley, used to be Wesley Homes on Lee Hill. And it's a great urban park where about 10 acres were preserved through a housing development probably 50 or 100 years ago. And it's a great place to see what happens when a forest remains intact. And the city has been so great in help supplying us with the resources to steward sites like that. So we're going to be out there with this tree. And also, we appreciate the support of the forestation program in Auburn. And if you have a street that you live on, we do have funds available through a grant. Street trees do enhance the value of your home. And if the proper tree is planted in the proper place, it really does make a difference. So contact our Parks Department if you know of a neighborhood that could benefit from street trees, because we do have a tree board really excited to plant more trees like we have in Auburn before.
Great.
Thank you.
So now I will ask you.
We moved it up.
Oh, you'll have a meeting notice sent to you.
It's like 9 a.m., but we'll get it out to you.
Yeah. So if you would go forward and accept the appreciation of council. Thank you, Daryl.
Thank you.
All right, and one last proclamation tonight, Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Do we have Laurel Redden here tonight? Hi. Would you come forward, please, Laurel? Thank you for joining us tonight. So I have a proclamation, then I'm sure you'll have a few words that you would like to share with everyone. Great. All right. Whereas sexual assault affects women, children, and men of all racial, cultural, and economic backgrounds, and whereas in addition to the immediate physical and emotional cost, sexual assault may also have associated consequences of post-traumatic stress disorder, substance abuse, depression, homelessness, eating disorders, and suicide. And whereas Sexual Assault Awareness Month calls attention to the fact that sexual violence is widespread and impacts every person in the community. And whereas no one person, organization, agency, or community can eliminate sexual assault on their own, but we can work together to educate our entire population about what can be done to prevent sexual assault, support victims and survivors and their significant others, and increase support for agencies providing services to survivors. And whereas the King County Sexual Assault Resource Center works hard to endure silence about sexual violence, to end silence about sexual violence, and creates new community-centered sexual violence prevention programs and resources. And whereas prevention is possible when everyone gets involved. The first step is increasing education, awareness, and community involvement. It's time for all of us to take action to create a safer environment for all. And now, therefore, I, Nancy Backus, Mayor of the City of Auburn, do hereby proclaim April 2019 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month in the City of Auburn, and urge all residents to join advocates and communities across the country in taking action to prevent sexual violence. Each day of the year is an opportunity to create change for the future. Dated this first day of April 2019. Laura, I'd like to give you that. Thank you. And please, if you have a few words you'd like to share.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Mayor Backus and the council for your early action in the month of April. Sexual Assault Awareness Month is something that has been going on for almost 20 years nationwide, and it is a month that we focus attention on ways we can all engage and communicate and talk about the issue. This issue is one that thrives in silence and in darkness, and we like to bring that to light. Have conversations about this, offer resources and tools to the whole community, and it's a wonderful first step in ending sexual violence that this city is coming forward and being a leader in ending sexual violence by talking about it and bringing it up at a meeting. So we certainly appreciate it, and we thank you, and we thank you all.
Thank you very much. And Laurel, if you would please go forward and accept the appreciation of council for your work. Thank you so much. And if I didn't say it, Laurel is from King County Sexual Assault Resource Center, or KSARC. right, we have one appointment tonight. That is to the Urban Tree Board. City Council to confirm the appointment of Tanya Gallett to the Urban Tree Board for a 3-year term to expire December 31st, 2021. Do we have a motion? Councilmember Brown.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I would move that we confirm the appointment of Tanya Gallett to the Urban Tree Board for a 3-year term to expire December 31st, 2021.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Councilmember Trout Manuel.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Councilmember Brown.
Yes, this is a great service to the community, and we appreciate Tanya stepping up for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor of the appointment of Tanya Gallett to the Urban Tree Board, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. Passes. All right. I don't believe we have any agenda modifications this evening. No, Your Honor. And we have no public hearings, so we will move to audience participation. This is a place on the agenda where the public is invited to speak to the City Council on any issue. Those wishing to speak are reminded to sign in on the form provided. And as a reminder, please limit your comments to 3 minutes, as Sean will begin the clock when you begin speaking. Is there anyone who would like to speak? Please come forward, give your name and address for the record.
Hi there. You guys might remember me from last month's council meeting. My name is Alyssa Johnson. I live at 5628 South 305th Street up on the West Hill. And I came with a group of neighbors just to keep our issue at the top of your minds. We're here to save the woods called Tall Timbers, which are currently owned by a developer and set to be developed into a 74-house subdivision. I want to have my neighbors stand up just so you can see who they are. So if anyone that's here for Save Tall Timbers could stand up, please. Thanks. And at least one of my neighbors will speak after me. Public speaking is a little difficult, so you can understand, but at least you can see who we are. So we're here to just keep lobbying you to buy this. It sounds like we came on a good day when you're discussing Arbor Day. I know you believe in the importance of trees. I want to read to you a testimonial that was sent to me by one of the campers that attended Tall Timbers Day Camp. This sums it up way better than I ever could. Her name is Riley Lokes, and she says, Dear City Council, regarding the planned Huntington Wood housing development, the area planned to be used for housing development is too valuable to the community to be demolished. As someone who grew up in the area, the property owned by the Gardners always offered a safe place to enjoy the outdoors. Even through her husband's death, Mrs. Gardner always offered her property to the Tall Timbers Day Camp with open arms. The camp drew both kids and adults from the surrounding region who fell in love with the property. The property was the last place available that gave kids a true outdoors experience. With its open field, numerous campsites, and heavily forested trails, it was hard to find a similar experience without driving a significant distance, and our community has always been gifted to have this resource at its disposal. With the addition of a couple trails in addition to the 2 existing access points, the property could act as a central hub to several neighborhoods that are otherwise isolated from each other. Looking back at this property, I hold fond memories, birthday parties and running through the trails playing games like laser tag and hide and seek with kids from the community. Other wooded properties in the area have been clear-cut and used to build housing developments. When our community loses places like these, people also lose the aspects of the area that they fell in love with when they chose to move to Auburn. Although nobody likes to see communities of closely packed houses replace the shade of trees and push out wildlife, the planned Huntington Wood housing development threatens a cornerstone of our community. People continue to return to the area and share memories, but a cornerstone of the community will be lost if this property is turned into a housing community. This property in Auburn is cherished by too many people and could be cherished by kids in the community for years to come. Adding another housing development where a beautiful regional park could be added instead would be the destruction of a valued community resource. Sincerely, Riley Lokes. And since I have 4 seconds. My family's also here, and my baby's crying because he wants a park.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Okay.
My name is Susan Brooks. I live at 30199 60th Avenue South, and I'm probably one of the last housing developments that tore down some trees, so I'm sorry about that. I'm here because at first I just love the trees, the birds, the hawks, the eagles, the owls, beautiful. And then when I start driving around going from, say, Auburn to Kent, you kind of pass all these parks. And up on West Hill in Auburn, there are no parks. It's really sad that there are no parks. There are a lot of families up there, and these woods already have trails through them. And you know, it's timely that you all were talking about Arbor Day and the trees and how they protect nature and give you fresh air and protect you from the sun. And they want to tear down every single last tree up there, and it just breaks my heart. It just breaks my heart. And if there's anything you all can do to help us save this park or save the trees so that we can have a park up there, would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Hi, my name is Michele Desmond. I live at 30625 56th Avenue South. And my husband and I are recent transplants. We moved to Auburn last year, and one of the things that attracted us to the neighborhood was these beautiful trees and forests around us, and it's why we chose to live in this neighborhood. So I'm going to read a few comments from our change.org petition. These are from many different people who wrote in. I have 3 kids and have to drive across city limits to get to the nearest park. They will live their lives in this neighborhood, and I want them to have a healthy dose of fresh air, nature, and socialization with kids they can get to know. Who else has kids and know where to take them? My grandson lives near here. My daughter would love to take him to a park closer to her. My husband and I have a 14-month-old daughter and a dog, and currently we have to drive across town to find a park. I would love for her and any future siblings to grow up with a park within walking distance. We need parks, not housing developments, more green space for our community. The tall timber woods are beautiful and a real neighborhood asset. It would be lovely for them to be saved for future generations. So I just wanted to echo all of those. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Final time, anyone?
Yes, I'm Bob Zimmerman, 33029 46th Place South. I'd like to speak about the increased fire risk we're facing here. The first week the week that spring started, Hillary France of the State Department of Natural Resources, the commissioner, reported that we had 50 wildfires in the state of Washington, 49 of which were on the west side. 25 years ago, you couldn't get a campfire going on the west side this time of year. And you start looking at this fire increase that we're having here, plus what they're having in California, they're having significant impacts on the ability to get homeowners insurance down there now. And if you can't get homeowners insurance, you can't mortgage a house. This can have a serious impact on homelessness. You know, you take the average, I think it's 60% of Americans are homeowners. 70% of Americans now live paycheck to paycheck, which basically means they can't come up with $1,000 to address an emergency situation. So if they see significant increases, like what the article I read, some people in California are getting 4 times the increase in their homeowners insurance if they can find it, they're going to be foreclosed on. And this kind of fire risk that we're having now, the hottest years that we've had, last year was the 4th hottest year on record. And the previous 4 hottest years were 15, 16, and 17. 2 of those years, we saw brush fires burning up that West Hill. I've lived up there for nearly 40 years, and that's the only 2 times I've ever known of a brush fire that was threatening houses on that hill. And I live on a kind of a green belt back there, and I was kind of concerned when I moved there of a forest fire moving through there. I have a friend in the Forest Service, and he said, well, you really don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. The underbrush is a barrier to fire. And the kind of crown fires you see moving through the forest only happen when you got temperature that is, temperature in centigrade that is higher or equal to the humidity. Well, we didn't used to have that kind of temperature and humidity here. I'm looking at my humidistat now, and I'm seeing, and temperature thermometer, and I'm seeing those kind of days up there on that hill starting in the last few summers. So it looks like I'm down to 5 seconds, so thank you. I hope you will take these issues seriously.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? All right, hearing none, we will move on to the council ad hoc committee reports. All right, Virginia, but we had already closed out public comment, but go ahead.
You closed it.
I said,
without asking twice if anyone else wanted to speak?
there is no requirement for me to ask twice. I said, okay, final time. Is there anyone that would like to speak? But I will allow you to go ahead and speak tonight.
That's very nice of you, Nancy. Virginia Haugen, 2503 R Street, Southeast, Auburn. Shortly after I joined the City Council in 2008, I received a letter from someone wanting Auburn to buy a piece of property on the West Hill. Something about a lake and quite a few acres. I was busy keeping tabs on our Economic Development Department that I was so busy keeping tabs on them that I missed the part about Auburn really buying that piece of real estate. After all, in 2008, the city was still involved in putting a hardware store across the street out of business. Dow Constantine is now bragging about putting money into parks in King County. If the city of Auburn uses grant money and our own parks budget to develop property with a pond on it, and if they build a trail around it with a bridge over the pond, I just wonder, how long will it be until our Parks Department is paying people to remove the litter from the above said pond? My only question is this: does the city of Auburn have enough police officers to remove even more homeless people from yet another city-owned property? This, of course, has all come to light at a time when our city administrators are supposed to be keeping the city of Auburn out of the red. I only refer to a recent news story in a local newspaper. Parks are wonderful, and Auburn has a bunch. Auburn has some of the best parks in Washington State. However, Auburn has a budget problem, and throwing money into what some people call a lake sounds like Auburn throwing themselves overboard without a lifeboat. I have listened very carefully to some people talking about removing, clear-cutting a piece of property so that developers can build houses. Well, guess what? When you build houses and you cut down all those trees, and we just talked about Arbor Day tonight, and I believe we have a new member of the tree board. I know of a tree we can save. The city tried to buy that property, and when the owner refused to sell it, then she found out that she couldn't put her own business in it because the permitting process was horrendous. The city of Auburn was upset because they didn't get to buy the property from King County. And now they're making
Virginia,
it
I need you to
impossible.
wrap it up. Your 3 minutes are up.
Now they're making it impossible for my friend to develop her own property. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will move on to council ad hoc committee reports. Council ad hoc committee chairs may report on the status of their ad hoc council committee's progress on assigned tasks and may give their recommendation to the City Council, if any. And since Councilmember Wales is excused this evening, Councilmember DeCoursey, I am assuming you will be giving that report.
I will. Thank you, Mayor. So Councilmember Wales and I reviewed the claims vouchers and payroll vouchers for tonight's meetings. So, and we had no questions for Shelley or staff. The claims vouchers were dated 4/1, and the amount for the claims vouchers for this period is approximately $1.85 million. And the payroll vouchers are for the period March 14th through March 27th, 2019, for a grand total of approximately $2.5 million, and we're recommending full approval by council.
Thank you. All right, we will move to the consent agenda. All matters listed on the consent agenda are considered by the City Council to be routine and will be enacted by one motion in the form listed. Do we have a motion? Deputy Mayor Pelosa.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Councilmember Baggett.
I'll second that, Your Honor.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Pelosa.
Yes, this consent agenda includes the minutes of the March 18th regular meeting, the claim vouchers and the payroll vouchers, which you just heard, and then the Public Works project for improving the Auburn Way North Sidewalk Improvement Project, and the amount from the contractor is $396,000. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. Passes. We have no unfinished business. We have no new business, so we move on to ordinances. Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance number 6712, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Auburn, Washington, amending ordinance number 6693, the 2019-2020 Biennial Operating Budget Ordinance, authorizing an amendment to the City of Auburn 2019-2020 budget as set forth in Schedule A and Schedule B.
Thank you. Do we have a motion? Councilmember Holman.
Yes, I move to adopt ordinance number 6712.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would second that motion.
Thank you. Councilmember Holman.
Yes, this is a quarterly amendment to our biennial operating budget. Whenever you develop a budget for 2 years, you have to adjust it quarterly. It's a routine matter.
Thank you. And it provides the carry forward balances from 2018. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor of ordinance number 6712, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. Passes.
Ordinance number 6713, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Auburn, Washington, related to underground utilities, authorizing the city to construct and pay for underground electric and telecommunication utility facility connections, providing for an appeal to the Public Works Director, and amending Section 13.32A.130 of the Auburn City Code.
Thank you. Do we have a motion? Councilmember DeCoursey.
I move to adopt ordinance number 6713.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Trout-Manuel.
I second that, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember DeCoursey.
Thank you, Mayor. As the city attorney said, this is a amendment to city code. We were briefed on this at the last study session by Director Galb, and this ordinance allows the converting of aerial power and communication lines to underground as part of city projects. So we heard some unique things last week about the possibility of looking at dual mastheads, weatherheads for this type of work. This will allow the city to have utility poles removed from public right-of-way and remove potential obstructions. And there's various options that can be problematic to property owners regarding undergrounding, and this allows the city to work with the property owners and also to look at different methods of how we could underground utilities.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? All those in favor of ordinance number 6713, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. Passes.
Resolution number 5415, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Auburn, Washington, authorizing the mayor to submit a grant funding application to the Port of Seattle for Economic Development Partnership Program funds and to accept and expend the grant funds.
Thank you. Do we have a motion? Deputy Mayor Pelosa.
Thank you, Mayor. I move for the adoption of Resolution 5415.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I would second the motion to adopt Resolution 5415.
Thank you. Questions or comments? All those in favor of resolution number 5415, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. Passes. All right, we will move to mayor and council member reports. At this time, the mayor and city council may report on significant items associated with their appointed positions on federal, state, regional, and local organizations. We will begin with Deputy Mayor Pelosa.
Thank you, Mayor. I attended the Regional Policy Committee recently, and the main topic was the upcoming Parks levy, which is planned to be on the ballot in August. There was public comment, and there were 5 citizens of King County that were in favor of the levy coming forward. The levy is going to cover renovation of some pools throughout King County, and at our last meeting, Councilmember Holman suggested, what about our pool owned by the Auburn School District? And it was a forward thrust pool many, many years ago, and the school district bought it, and this pool would be qualified for renovation by grant money if the levy is passed. So, John, that went throughout the whole RPC, and it was a good recommendation and thoughtfulness because there are other pools in King County, and then we have ours now, so it has an opportunity also. And at that, also we talked about trails within the King County region, and so trails would be within this levy consideration. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Holman.
No report, Your Honor.
Councilmember Brown.
No report tonight, Mayor.
Councilmember Trout Manuel.
I'll make it easy, no report.
All right. Councilmember DeCoursey.
I have a short report. On May 20th, along with Transportation Planner Joe Welsh, we attended the King County Regional Transit Committee meeting. And this meeting was looking at the work plan set forth by Metro for 2019 and a number of items that will be coming up for future briefings to the RTC, including looking at the emergency snow response that was conducted this past winter with lessons learned from that, continued review of the period of maximum constraint as the downtown Seattle area continues to undergo transition, and then looking at different things like parker users fees, the next generation Orca card, the continuation of the initiative for expanding Rapid Ride, including here in Auburn, and then looking at high-capacity transit, community connections, and the potential impact of Metro on a initiative that's going probably to the ballot in November on I-796 related to car tabs. We also had a briefing from Chair Balducci, who's the chair of the RTC, which was interesting. And Chair Balducci presented an overview of the transit that has taken place over the past 100 years in the region. And it was interesting to see the transition of how things increased from horses to vehicles to more of the other types of transportation in place, and how congested it has become, as we all know, and it will continue to become congested. One thing that Chair Balducci mentioned was it is very clear that autonomous vehicles are not the answer to relieving our mobility issues. Just because we don't put people in a vehicle doesn't mean the vehicle is not on the road. So looking at innovative ways of changing transportation, including bicycles, scooters, transportation network companies that serve typically higher income households, and how Metro can transition themselves into a better mobility network. So that's all coming about for the future. One interesting thing was Metro is looking at the potential of providing electric buses in their fleet. So we'll see how that progresses over the years as it continues to go on, and how more partnership agreements can be put in place and reached. And lastly, I completed my term as the chair of the SCA caucus for the RTC, and my term as the vice chair of the RTC. And Councilmember Margison from Redmond was elected chair of the caucus and vice chair of the RTC. So I had a very enjoyable year as the vice chair of the RTC, and now I turn the reins over to Councilmember Margison. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Baggett.
No report tonight, Your Honor.
Oh, my goodness. Well, all right. I will share a few things that have taken place in the last couple of weeks. On Tuesday, March 19th, we had our second South End Mayor's Lunch to discuss issues of importance for the South End mayors. And this time, a majority of our discussion was centered around the recent weather events and how each city handled those events. Lessons learned, also where does emergency management reside within each one of the cities, and there is no absolute place where emergency management resides. Some is out of the mayor's office, some is out of police, some is out of fire. And so the consensus of the group was that it was a very good opportunity for us to test the waters, if you will, on our emergency services and our planning. I think we all felt that there could be a few things that we could have changed, but all in all, I will tell you that Auburn received a great deal of kudos for the fact that our roads were so well maintained during the entire weather event, and that was over a 2-week period. And so very proud of the work that was done by our team here in Auburn. On Wednesday the 20th, I want to thank the council members that are here this evening for attending the annual State of the City address. Proud to report on those great things that are in works in Auburn, what has been accomplished in the past, but also to share the challenges that we have that are facing us. And so I want to give you my personal appreciation for attending the meeting that night and for your leadership. On Friday the 22nd, the 8th Congressional District, Representative Kim Schreier, Dr. Schreier, held her first 8th Congressional District Mayor's meeting. We met over in Issaquah at Issaquah City Hall to talk about issues of significance impacting us at the federal level, and a majority of that discussion also surrounded transportation and the fact that over 80% of the roads in this country are in cities, yet we do not receive 80% of the funding, and the fact that the prior administration focused on the urban areas. The current administration is focusing more on rural areas. And so cities like Auburn fall to the wayside on that. We do not get the funding that we need. And so we talked about the opportunity to also have funding that is right-sized for cities of our size. So Representative Schreier listened intently, took a great number of notes, and we will continue to talk with her on issues such as that. In fact, she's having a town hall on April 17th up at Green River College, so we will also share comments with her at that and continuing both in this Washington and the other Washington. The 47th Legislative District Town Hall that was held by Senator Doss and Representative Entenmann on Friday or Saturday the 23rd. Councilmember Holman, I know you were there as well. Representative Pat Sullivan was unable to attend. He was in Olympia working on budget issues, so we appreciated their time talking about the issues in the 47th. The Auburn Valley Humane Society Gala was also on Saturday the 23rd, so it was a day spent up at Green River College. I want to congratulate our King County Councilmember Pete Von Reichbauer for receiving the Wet Nose Award. from the Auburn Valley Humane Society for his work in support of animals. And then, let's see, Saturday attended the memorial service for our former fire chief, Bob Johnson, who served the city beginning in 1984. One of his responsibilities was going from a one fire station city to 2 fire stations. For those of you that have lived here for long enough, you will recall that we had one fire station in town as you came off of the Highway 18 off-ramp onto Auburn Way South, where the McDonald's is now at Firehouse Square. And you know, when you would drive into the city at that point, you felt safe because you saw that fire station right there. Well, he had the challenge to move and add 2 fire stations. So 2 that we currently still have in existence, Station 31 at the north end of town and Station 32 at the south end of town, were both his doing. And it was a wonderful turnout for a wonderful man. We will miss him, and we appreciate all of the service he had to our great city. Mr. City Attorney, I believe we have need for either an executive or closed session tonight. Is that correct?
Yes, Mayor, we like a closed session for some labor discussions authorized under 4230 140 sub 4B.
All right, and we don't have to say how much time?
Not required to. It's not
Okay.
subject to the Open Public Meetings Act. We may ask council to take action after the closed session.
Okay, so there could be action after this closed session. We will adjourn to closed session.
Yes. I have pictures with him and
Where's the microphone?
measured my No, they're not. All right, we will call the meeting back to order. Deputy Mayor.
Yes,
Microphone, please.
we're going to be making a motion here on the Auburn Police Guild for the years 2019 through 2021. Therefore, I move to authorize the mayor to execute a collective bargaining agreement between the City of Auburn and the Auburn Police Guild.
Thank you, and that is resolution number 5416. Do we have a second? Councilmember Holman.
I second.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Pelosi.
This, again, I covered it pretty much in my entry, but this is a collective bargaining agreement authorizing the mayor to execute it between the City of Auburn and the Auburn Police Guild for the years 2019 through 2021.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, I would just like to publicly share my appreciation for Candace Martinson, our Director of HR, and Aaron Barber, as well as Director Shelley Coleman, Chief Pearson, and our City Attorney Steve Gross for their work in this contract. All those in favor of resolution number 5416, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. Passes. Deputy Mayor.
Okay, resolution 5419 is, I move, this is a bargaining agreement between the City of Auburn and the Auburn Police Sergeants Association for the years 2019 through 2021.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Trout-Manuel.
I will second that, Mayor.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Pelosi.
Again, resolution 5419 authorizes the mayor to execute a collective bargaining agreement between the City of Auburn and the Auburn Police Sergeants Association for the years 2019 through 2021.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Councilmember Brown.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. You appropriately thanked the city negotiators, and that's entirely appropriate. I would also, from my perspective, like to thank the Police Officers Guild as well as the sergeants for their participation as well. It takes two to fight. It takes two to come to an agreement, and so I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Thank you, Councilmember Brown. Yes, I was mistaken in not thanking them as well, because it is a team effort or a group effort in this case. And as I've said, if you are a valued member of our team before the negotiations, you are a valued member of our team during and after those negotiations as well. Thank you. All right, any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of resolution number 5419, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. Passes. And I believe with that, that is the business of the city for the evening, and we are adjourned. Thank you.